responsibility being a program manager, what is that you have to do is that you need to evaluate the portfolios. Evaluating the portfolios based upon the complexity, based upon the kind of domain it coming from, based on the kind of expertise and manpower which those projects were dealing with. Because those portfolios and all, everything has to understand the right objectives and they have to meet the right strategic initiatives which we have prepared so far. So evaluating the portfolio is one of the responsibility of a program manager. This is first point. Okay, if you have any confusion over this, please go ahead. Please ask me again. Okay, no problem. Right, so if you are a program manager, the major responsibility, the first responsibility you have to do is to evaluate the portfolios. Right, point number one. Second point, you need to manage the risk. Now, from the context of risk, when you talk about, let's forget about managing risk for some time. Let us discuss about the concept of risk. If you see from a context, what exactly risk stands for? What is the word of risk we used in project? And for what reason risk of the word of risk is being used in our projects? What was the reason behind that? Hassan, why we are using a word called risk in any of the projects?
Because there's something at stake,
What kind of stake is that?
like from the
Is
stakeholders.
that stake is something confined only for a particular object?
Uh, because if we, I mean, not particularly for a particular object, because your business was may lose their goals or their
Mhm.
profit earnings or their value that they're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
So that's all at risk. Risk of not meeting deliverables.
Okay,
Um,
then what does it mean? What are the different types of risks we have? I'm
I
not
mean,
asking you the stages of risk. Stages of risk is different. I'm asking you what are the different types of risk which we need to manage. Because
yeah,
managing risk is what we have to do, right? Being a program manager.
like
What are the different stages of risk? Excuse me.
so it's
What's the
like
different stages of risk?
risk of project schedule not meeting deadlines, um, risk of
What are the
projects.
types of risk I'm talking about? Types of risk. What are the different types?
I'm not sure.
First point, budget risk.
Okay.
The first risk is budget risk or financial risk. Okay. Now, what is meant by budget risk? Because being a program manager, if you want to manage any kind of risk in reference to the project development, first of all, we should understand what are the different types of risk are available. What are the different types of risks are there? So there are different types of risk which are there. The first thing we call it as budget risk. What is meant by budget risk? What does it mean? What is meant by
Going
budget risk?
like going over budget, risk of something like along those lines,
A risk of
not meeting the budget or going over
not
budget.
meeting the budget. So that's what we call it as overrun of cost, right? Overrun of cost. Am I right?
Okay.
That's what we call it as overrun of cost, cost overrun, right? So due to this cost overrun, what will happen? Even the project is completed, but we consider this as a cost failure project. Do you agree on this? Yes or no? Hassan.
Yeah, sure.
For example, let me put you this way. You are a program manager. At the same time, you are into, there was some project management team as well who is working with you as well. Okay. Of course, assume that both are into managerial roles where you guys collectively has to manage the risk. So the first risk is what we called as budget risk. What was budget risk stands for? Means whatever the amount of budget was allocated for a project to complete, you have to ensure that Your solution or as well as the project must be completed within the timelines of the budget. Will you accept it? Right or not? Right. Now, so what could be the reasons why you are not meeting the budget? What could be the reasons behind that? If you are think from yourself as a program manager or a project manager, whoever you are, right? Think from that perspective and tell me what are the possibilities of failure of budget which was already planned by you so far? What was the reason behind it? What was the reason behind
Possibilities of failure of
failing
budget.
of budget? Sorry?
Yeah, so it could be over hiring of resources.
Okay, great. Over hiring of resources. Excellent. Yes, next.
Um, and then it,
Over hiring of resources, which will incur cost, right? So
right.
cost overrun. Point number one. Excellent. Next. Over
Project
hiring. First point.
project not running as per schedule.
Scope. You have
Yep.
not identified the scope. Why is it happened? Because you have not identified the scope possible, right? Scope you have not identified properly. Because of that, it may be running on time, may not be running on time, right? Because scope, understanding the scope is essentially important for you because there are some challenges you come across when you are working on the project. Some challenges which is in your territory, some challenges which is not in your territory. So hence what is that we have to do? We need to manage both. You need to manage both in scope and as well as out scope. Out scope means, for example, customer is trying to change the requirements in between. So what will happen now if customer is changing the requirements? What will happen? What will happen? Complexity of the project will be changed a lot. Am I right or not?
Yeah.
Is it clear or no? Not, Hassan, right? So, for example, when the project won't complete as per the schedules and times, because if you are into management role, if you are not identified scope properly, this kind of problems will arise. So what kind of problems you get in scope? For example, customer has given some requirements. Now customer has changed some requirements in between. When there is a change in requirements taken place, what will happen? Automatically complexity of the project will also get increased. Will you agree on that? Complexity of the project will also get increased. So when complexity of the project is increased, what will happen? Automatically, the amount of effort your team has to put will also get increased to the next level. Yes or no? Is it clear or not? Understood, Hassan?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So this is the second point. Yeah. Next, coming third point. What was the third point? Budget. First thing. Second, may not be meeting the right deadlines in the project. The reasons were discussed already. What is the next type of risk?
Uh, External influences like rate increases, cost of material increase, or inflation, stuff like that.
Mm, that's all comes under budget, right? Rate, cost, everything connecting to budget. See, it could be anything. Those are all. Let's put all these things in budget risk.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Rate, cost increases, everything comes under budget.
Okay. Third thing could be scope change or scope increase.
Scope change we have discussed, right? Scope change we have already discussed. What else? Scope changes we have discussed. Budget level issues we have discussed. What else?
I'm not sure.
Technical risk. Technical risk. What is meant by technical risk? What is meant by technical risk?
A solution not meeting the needs, a technical solution.
No, not right to the point. Technical risk means the kind of technical infrastructure you are using to develop the application. For example, I'll give you an example to you. For example, you are developing a portfolio management for one of your customer. Okay, for example. Now, assume that there was an application called portfolio management which was already using by the customer for a long time. Now, customer wants you to add some new features and functionalities to the existing stuff. Listen carefully. Again, repeating you. There is a portfolio management application which customer is using for a very long time. Now, customer wants to add some new features and functionalities to the existing portfolio. Okay, this is the scenario. Now, if this is the case, the problem is when you want to add some new features and functionalities to the existing stuff, whatever the technical infrastructure they have used for the existing application must be supporting. For example, the application was developed on .NET. Now, if you want to add some new features and functionalities like security related stuffs and all, .NET application may not be supporting. Technology of .NET may not be supporting. Here, you may require some kind of technology, something relating to Java is needed. Don't you think this is a technical risk to you, for your team, for you and as well as for your team? Don't you think so? Sir, don't you think this is a technical risk?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, tell me.
Hello?
Yeah, tell me. I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What is technical? Is it is not considered as a technical risk?
Like
Yes, sir.
like tool related issues?
Technology related issues,
Yeah, to technology related issues.
right? For example, again, I'm repeating you. Technical risk means there is a scenario. I'll explain again. Assume that there is an application called core banking. Okay, core banking application is there. So core banking application is using by one of your customer for a very long time. They're using for very long time. Now customer has approached you that they wants to add some new features and functionalities to the existing thing. This is what customer is expecting you to do it. Now, when you are understanding about the technical complexities, all that, you and as well as your technical team has identified that existing technology or existing infrastructure which an application has is not supportive. Hence, you want to change the technical infrastructure for the new features and functionalities where you need to have, you don't have any other choice right from the scratch. Don't you think this is a technical risk? Don't you think
Yeah,
this
it
is a
is.
technical risk?
It is.
Right or not? Right? So technical risk. Why? Because technical infrastructure has changed from one extent to another extent. Technical infrastructure has changed phenomenally. So when there is a technical infrastructure which was changed, automatically it will be impacting on the automatically it will be impacting on the application what is that we are going to develop. So there are possibilities sometimes there will be a less rate of success which might be taking into an account. Will you agree on this? Yes, sir. Right? Is it clear or not? Right?
Yeah, it is clear.
Hassan. Right. Third point. What is the next risk? What is the next risk? Budget, project related things we have discussed, technical risk. What is next risk? Operational risk. Next is operational risk. What is meant by operational risk? What does it mean?
Like
What
the
is
day to
meant
day.
operational risk means day to day transactions of the application. What is that are we going to use or what is that we are using is what we call it as operational risk. Yes or no? Right?
Right.
Agreed or not? Awesome.
Yeah,
Right?
agree.
Operational risk. Next, what was the last one? So there is a last risk which is involved in it. What was that? What was the last risk?
Um, Human resources.
Manpower risk. No, manpower risk already scheduled, right? Schedule all that, right? In that there itself you will get all that. There is no manpower risk as separate. Manpower risk is an integral part of it. You cannot differentiate manpower risk from separate things, right? Manpower risk is an integral part of it. What else? What else
Infrastructure.
is what else is the important one? Infrastructure we have discussed, right? In the technical risk itself, you have got the infrastructure.
Okay.
In the technical risk itself, you have got the infrastructure. You have discussed about there itself. You have discussed that. What was the other risk which is involved in it?
So, like most of the risks that we've discussed are project related. Maybe the other risk might be stakeholders or project
No,
not
no.
being relevant
Stakeholder.
anymore.
That is next. Not stakeholder related. That is
Okay.
relating to regulatory risk. Regulatory. Remember this point. Regulatory risk. One more last but not least important risk which has to be evaluated, which has to be managed by is called regulatory risk. So what is
Okay.
meant by regulatory risk? What is meant by regulatory? What is meant by regulatory? What is
Like
regulatory stands for?
regulating the project.
Policy, policies.
Okay.
Regulatory stands for policies, procedures, standards. Do you require to follow to develop an application is called we call it as regulatory risk. Understood? For example, I'll give an example to you. You are developing a solution for one of your manufacturing customer, right? There is a customer for you who is from a manufacturing sector. That manufacturing sector customer is asking you to develop a solution for their business problem. What is that they are facing now? Now, when you want to develop an application, assume that the company is a CMM level company. The company is a CMM level company. When that organization is a CMM level organization, when they are giving you the requirements or the kind of business processes what usually they follow is entirely based upon the standards of CMM, right? Based on entirely the standards of CMM. At the same time, the kind of quality of the project or the solution what you guys were developing must also be on the top of it. That's what the point is. Now you tell me, is it not considered as a regulatory risk for you and as well as for your team? Don't you think so? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Do you understand or not? Right or not? Right? Regulatory
Yeah.
risk
Yeah.
means, see, when you are going to develop a solution for any of the customer, make sure there are some policies and procedures which normally we have to follow. So when you are following any policies and procedures for any of the application, you have to make sure what kind of standards, what kind of procedures we need to involve in order to complete a solution for a customer requirements is essentially important. The best example I have given here is CMM level. For example, the organization is CMM level organization. So when you are developing a solution for a customer who is from a CMM level, so when you are providing solution, you have to keep into an account that CMM level standards has to be implemented there for sure, without any deviation in this. This is what we call it as regulatory risk. Understood? Clear? Is it clear to you, Hassan? Right?
Yes.
Now, this is where, right? Coming to the point. This is where generally managing of risk is also another responsibility being a program manager, you have to be focused on. So managing risk, these are the different areas of risk which has to be